like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
You know, this is, we're going to play this next song, and we've never played it in San Diego. We kind of save it for special occasions. And obviously, we're proud of Seattle and all the groups that came out of Seattle. We're proud to be part of all the groups that came out of Seattle. We all live in Seattle. We're proud of Seattle. But, you know, for me, I was born in Chicago, so that's kind of a hometown show. But this is a hometown show for us. Matt Cameron and me and Mike McCready have all spent formative years here in San Diego. And you've witnessed, I've made enough toast to make you think that this might be just the wine talking, but no, it's all me. It's all me, and it's all us. So thanks so much for being part of this hometown homecoming. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
everybody now. Welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. Today's episode is going to be covering a great show. Not a good show, but a great show. Just a little spoiler alert for the next hour and a half to 2 hours or so. You are going to be listening to one of the best Pearl Jam shows of the era, as a matter of fact. So 2006, this is a tour that went on forever. There's around 70 to 80 shows in there. I know that there's a lot of late night performances and things like that kind of count as the overall number. And since they have never matched the amount of shows in 1 year that they did on this tour, a lot of shows on two different legs in North America in May and in July and June. And then they went over and did a huge European tour with a couple of festivals, which is, of course, of note. And then places that they had never even played before or after in Croatia and Greece and a couple others in there. And then in November, they go and they do the whole Australia route. So it is a heavy workman's load type year for Pearl Jam. And there's a couple of things that I can't wait to get into because it'll be interesting conversation. But when we get into this show, you'll see, because it is extremely difficult for one show to stand out in a whole entire year of about 80. But you'll see why San Diego is the one. We know what San Diego brings to the table. Hometown show, you guys. And I think that's going to be a huge emphasis tonight when we cover this. So let's just jump right in. We got a lot to talk about. Randy Sobel over here. The guru, Javier Havas, is over there.
How are you, my friend?
I'm great because, as mentioned, I cannot wait to get into this.
I know.
We texted a lot this week that was basically like, holy shit, these are some of the best performances of these songs that we've heard in a very, very long time.
I know it's 2006. I mean, if you don't know that this is my favorite time around, it's just, yeah. And there's so many really good shows to pick, but this one really stands out. So, yeah, looking very much forward to dig into this one.
And I think we have to give the props and credit to our patron, Doug, who picked this episode. So thank you, Doug, for his patron request. And I am excited because I don't know why it wasn't on my radar to do sooner, but I thought we hadn't done a 2006 in a very long time. So it was a good time to get all of that in. But before we get into the episode and get into the era and everything like that, there is one piece of business from last week, a pretty notable one that I think we have to address here. And that is, if you listen to Rockin' in the Free World when we covered it last week in Tampa, there was a bit where Ed says there's a kinder, gentler George Bush Jr.'s hand. And I kind of, I kind of lashed out. I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense for him to say that, because in later years, that was 2000, and, just a couple years later, he would not be saying anything kind and gentle. And to my defense here, it didn't sound sarcastic. It sounded pretty even keel, and we know that he was all for Nader at the time and kind of knew that he wasn't really a Bush guy no matter what, but things weren't clicking is kind of what I was alluding to. Now, when being told this, and I will address this by saying that Patrick Bogle was the one to share this with us, but he is the person that I actually went to initially to find out why the hell he was saying it. He never told me to begin with. He told me something else. So he didn't gather that I had no idea that the original lyrics that Neil wrote, the 1,000 Points of Light, was a quote directly from, I believe, either the RNC or inauguration of George Bush Sr. So I would never know that. I've never went back and listened to those speeches. It happened when I was 2 years old. Don't really care to, and just not something that I really dug into. And then the kinder, gentler nation, I believe, was the line that Bush had used in those speeches. So that was kind of the tongue-in-cheek, kinder, gentler George Bush Jr. hand. But I'm just throwing that out there early because it seems kind of ridiculous, because a couple of people had gotten in touch and said, oh, hey, this was that. But it does seem kind of ridiculous that we did miss that. So I wanted to address exactly why we missed it. And we wouldn't have missed it if, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was not living in this country still, so
Right.
yeah, I feel very disconnected too. But hey, Patrick, I mean, thank you for pointing that out, because I remember I think he said something over social media, and I'm like,
He did.
Yep, never knew about that. So,
But I had texted him earlier that week when we were covering, when I was doing my notes, and I'm like, why the fuck is he saying this? And he told me something like, oh, well, it's, part of the time. Never mentioned anything about the inauguration speech or whatever it was from George Bush Sr. So
well, now we know.
we do know. We do know. And we do appreciate the sharing of facts, but we could have had it last week. That's all I'll say. Anyway, now back to reality. So 2006. I always liked this tour year, but as I mentioned before, there's a lot to really dig into from this tour. I don't know if this is a good or a bad problem to have, but I've always been searching for the one from 2006, because there's all these different eras where you can kind of say, all right, well, 2010, MSG Night 2 is the one. 1992, you can point to a couple of them. Unplugged, you can point to Drop in the Park, you can point to Pink Pop as being the one from that era that stands out. There's 1994, you can say Fox Theater. 1995, you can say Red Rocks. There's a lot that you can really say from 1995. But my point being is that I don't think personally that I had ever found the one from 2006, and that's why that era just kind of stuck at me and bugged me in a way. It was just kind of this long search for having to find what shows define this era. And it could be a one show answer, it could be a couple shows that have the answer. I always kind of thought if it was anything, the Grand Rapids show speaks volumes for what happened on that year. Also, I think the San Francisco shows that end that West Coast leg are pretty important, especially night 3. But digging into San Diego, I think I kind of realized that we might have stumbled on it. This might be it when it comes to the era defining show of 2006. And what's sad about it is that I don't think it's universally lauded as that, which is disappointing. People go back to the Long Road moment, which we'll spend a very large amount of time on today. But I feel like this should be talked about way more than it actually is.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of like a sleeper show. Part of my upbringing with the band, it was just to listen to a lot of this era. And like you said, there we can pinpoint so many. I will pinpoint Dublin too, which is an outstanding show from this era. San Francisco, San Diego, you mentioned a few others, but this is the kind of show that if you really don't pay attention, because maybe you're going to check the set and you're like, well, this is kind of very similar to what they were doing around that time. But if you want to understand what was going on around that time, this is the show that you got to listen to. Oh, it's so good. It's just so good. Well, everything in 2006 was good, but this is a little beyond gooder than the rest, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like everything that I had listened to up until this point was like, man, the bar is extremely high, but everything is at the bar. That was the problem. Like only one or two things just exceeded it just a little bit. But when the bar is that high, it's a good problem to have. But it does feel like if you were to poll 100 people that went to shows or have listened to the majority of shows in 2006, it seems like you would get a lot of different answers, right?
Right. And it's overwhelming because there's so many shows that you can pick from. It can be overwhelming, but I think the show reflects and rescues what the band was really trying to do around that time, sonically, their headspace where they were at, and the performances too. The performances are so intense and so powerful, regardless of the song that you choose from the show. It's like, it's all good.
Yeah, it's funny because Ed will bring up the night prior in Vegas, and we've covered that Vegas show, albeit a very, very long time ago. Eddie kind of says in that, he's like, oh, we didn't feel good about that one. It kind of stunk. And who knows if that's pandering to San Diego or not. But like, I don't remember that being that bad at all. But that's the thing. Like, if the bar is so high, how are you going to exceed it? And I think what we'll see with a lot of these songs are just pushing the envelope as much as they can. And it's one of these shows where you get good stories, you get throwbacks to a hometown show, which obviously, if you're in Chicago, Seattle, San Diego, you're going to get that. And there's always that air of what are they going to do for your hometown? Not just that, but performance wise, everything was revved up to a way where it was just sounding so good. Songs were fast, but also legible. Not like they were getting too fast and getting a little ahead of themselves. No, the band found a way to click at this time while speeding up their songs like that. And you'll see it with a lot of these. They're just unreal performances and otherworldly performances too. So, do you have anything gear wise that you want to talk about in 2006 that kind of set the tone for the sound, like you said, sonically for this year? What are some of the things that we're going to be listening to when we dig into the set in just a minute?
Well, it's from a guitar player standpoint, this is my favorite time. When you choose basically the guitar amplifier that started all the tech that we know right now with guitar tube amps like a Fender Bassman, which is ironically, it was an amp that it was designed for bass players, but guitar players ended up using it anyways for jazz, whatever. I think this sets the precedent for what the rock raw sound that we really, really like about this band. I don't want to say started, but really defined what direction they wanted to take from that point on. If you want to take like the genesis of how they sound now, this could be a really good starting point because, like you were saying, Randy, like some super fast, maybe with a different kind of equipment, the articulation and the harmonics that they obtain out of the songs, maybe they wouldn't be there. And the selection of the gear that they had around this time, which is like super old school stuff, like I said before, basements and Marshall head here and there, they were just like the right choices because the band sounds absolutely incredible. And if you hear this boot, you can hear every single detail of everything that they play.
And speak of basements, who's the proud new owner of a 59 Fender Bassman over here?
That will be me. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's coming. Actually, I'm looking at the tracking number right now. So yes, it's gonna be here tomorrow. So most likely we're going to be posting something like that, maybe on social media. But yeah, it's an amp that I've been chasing for a long time, and now I have a really good opportunity and just pull the trigger on it. So yeah, it's coming home.
Love to hear it, and we're going to hear some of that when we get into the next Gear Garage episode, whenever we dig in. One of the biggest themes that comes out of the show, as mentioned before, is Long Road and the story about how that song came to be. And it's about one of Ed's teachers, a man named Clayton E. Liggett, and he was his drama teacher back in high school. And he's somebody, if you've heard the name before, then you're paying attention because he talks about him a little bit and talks about his influence on his life and how he helped shape him to be the person that he is. And I'll talk about a story when we get into the episode, but I just want to give you the floor now. Is there a guitar teacher, somebody in school in your life that kind of like Ed to Clayton helped you kind of create a path for your future?
Yes. One of my favorite high school teachers, she was my language teacher, and she was always like pushing for music, listen to music, read, educate yourself, science knowledge, base knowledge, all that kind of stuff. And she was always a major supporter of following your passion too. Unfortunately, she passed away 2 years ago now. I couldn't make it to the funeral because I was here, but my family was kind enough just to go there for me and just give some flowers to the family. But that's the first person that will come to my mind when it comes to that. Definitely shaped a lot of the stuff that I'm very passionate for. And she always did it in a very positive way and never felt intrusive, never felt invasive. It was always like a very, very good example that I'll remember. And hopefully I can do the same thing for somebody else in some sort of influence.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an important thing to have these kind of people in your life because you just never know kind of behind the curtain what people are going through and what kind of guidance that they need. When I work, I'm kind of seen as sort of somebody that's been doing this for a long time, like a veteran on the job and everything like that. And there's a lot of kids that are either just coming out of college or are still in college. And I feel like I can be in the position to help guide them through what might be a very, very difficult career to get through because it was difficult for me. So without teachers, nobody grows. Nobody gets to where they need to be just on their own. You always need somebody to help you, whether it's mentally, whether it's, with knowledge, just push you on the path. I think that's just really important to have. And I think a lot of people kind of lose that. We have so many boneheads out there now that are just anti college for whatever reason. They're telling kids don't go to college. Just college won't do you any good. And I won't say who those boneheads are, but they're boneheads. And essentially, that's something that you'll miss if you don't go, if you allow yourself to be taught, if you allow yourself to attain the information that you need in order to succeed, then somebody will play that pivotal role in your life of helping propel you ahead. So I just wanted to bring that up now and kind of tease for when we get out of the encore and talk about the real deal. So, all right, preset time. But we're not going to be talking about this for very long because we don't have a recording. I cannot find a recording of Soon Forget. So this was the pre-show, but At the time, Ed was doing this basically every night. Come out, do a song. Here's Sonic Youth in this instance. Sometimes in 2006, it was either Slater Kinney or My Morning Jacket, bands along that nature. And he did a really good job of trying to get everybody to come out, sit down in their seat, and enjoy the opener band, who took a lot for them to be there as well. And for those that did and went to go see My Morning Jacket and Kings of Leon in that position as well, they opened up a bunch of shows for them this year, especially down in Australia. People got to know these bands and then would become huge fans just because they went on tour with them. So important stuff that Ed was doing at the time. And I wish he would do it a lot more now. He kind of dabbled with it a little bit in 2022, but with a couple of unknown openers, Dead Pioneers sound like they're going to be real fun to see live. But I feel like this is a good opportunity to do it again this year. Okay, jump into this phenomenal set list here with a phenomenal opener. Now, this, you would think, pretty common to get in San Diego, and it is. The last time they played in San Diego, this was the opening track as well. Obviously, being a coastal city, you think of the beach when you're on San Diego, and that's why Oceans is the opener here. At 4 of the dozen shows that they played in San Diego. So not every single time, but enough where I think the moments where they do play it absolutely stand out. And this version, I thought, was just a perfect way to get your crowd ready for this band and what they were going to bring on this night, because it's the perfect balance of it having power, energy surges, excitement, and having some explosive moments. Because sometimes when you get Oceans in a show, it can have a couple of different identities. It can get a little bit plotting. Sometimes it's down-tuned, and the down-tune can kind of feel like the song's off a little bit and doesn't have that original take on it. And then other times it can be just a little bit too fast and a little bit offbeat. But I think this had everything going in its favor. Just pounding drum presence without getting overly exhaustive on it. But Ed's vocals were just fantastic too. Like, this could not have been a better opener for the show, and it's the best Oceans that I've heard in a really long time.
And it sets the tone. Like, it's such a well-balanced version that it will set the tone for everything that is coming after the fact. But the band sounds superb. It's a really good version, like you said. It has a little bit of everything that you're hoping to hear in this kind of song, and it really opens the appetite for the next two. And the next two are quite the thing too.
Oh, I'll throw out the next 3. Put that trademark on that. Sets the tone, the Live on 4 Legs trademark. If you're playing Live on 4 Legs bingo, you have your free space. And you have it right away, which is pretty much what happens around here. But yes, setting the tone. And then I don't know if with Severed Hand, it's just kind of like exceeding the tone, but that's what it feels like when you're going to get into this section. So Severed Hand, Corduroy, Brain of J, and then Worldwide Suicide at the tail end of that. I think the first 3 are just unbelievable. Severed Hand, I mean, explosive. And, there's a part in like the second verse where Mike is doing that kind of like pitch harmonics that you talk about a lot. That little
Yeah.
for some reason, that was so fast and ferocious in this version that it felt unstoppable. Like it felt like it was on fire. I can't articulately describe like the differences between a version like this and another version that has that part but like maybe doesn't take it to another level. There's no looseness, I'll put it that way. It's just taking a stranglehold and absolutely accelerating with it. And it was that part that got me locked in. I don't know, like you talk about some of these songs have trances, and this is a different kind of trance than like a Garden or Release, but that part I feel like put me in a little bit of a trance.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this is a song that it was utilized a ton in the spot, or sometimes flat out they were opening with severed hand, but whatever he was playing, it goes through and it hits you. And what Stone is doing as well, what Jeff is doing as well, it's just such a well interconnected interpretation of whatever they're doing in their instrument that it works and it works fine. And sometimes you didn't hear that quite well. You don't hear the pitch harmonics right in your face, but in this one, it does. And the solo at the end, even though that it has maybe a little loose here and there, but it's just in your face. And that's what I really like about this era, because this is how they sounded around that time. Like, in your face, we're going to play loud and we're going to play for a very long time.
Yeah, like I said, barn burners over here, and then once you transition into corduroy is just another one that's just going to hit you in the face. But the point I want to make on corduroy is that something cool kind of happens, and I don't know how often this has happened, so I'm going to say that this doesn't happen very often, because we've covered enough versions of corduroy now that I feel like I'd pick up on whether we hear this more often than not. And it's after the bridge, the Everything Has Changed bridge. You get back to the chorus, and it sounds like the only guitar you hear on this is Ed. Sounds dynamic when you do that, because Mike is off, Stone is off, but what it's doing is it's kind of, I wouldn't even say it's like giving you a break from that sound. It's just kind of loading up for all that sound to come back and hit you in the face again. And that's what I loved about this. I don't know why this can't be more of a staple thing in corduroy, because it's just a cool little thing that I don't even know if it was like purposeful or what, but little added bonuses here that make songs stand out, and that one was just well executed.
There's another really good one from Reading Festival that they do the same thing, but this is what they chose to do around this time. It is so cool. You get that time to breathe, but then the whole band gets in and it explodes again. We do it more often, I don't know, or go back to the same version that we're doing around this time, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, we covered that show a very long time ago, probably just as long as we did that Vegas show we mentioned before, so I don't remember that. And this is not going to be a normal thing where our 2006 intake is going to be this low, that we haven't done a 2006 show in a while, but we'll find these versions and we will point them out. And look, we're kind of not done with corduroy, because you just got to mention here that Cameron is a machine during the solo. This is Cameron's era. He just takes over the whole damn thing, and Mike is his best flashy self. And when you're 3 songs in, the crowd is just on fire. We'll get to them a little bit in a second or two and why this crowd is good, but already you can kind of sense that something good is happening in that room. And once you get into Brandon J, comes out like a damn rocket. Like it feels like the bridge too. Sometimes you just don't know if like you're getting a little bit of echo from Ed's voice at all, and you think that that's crowd. But there's another moment that's going to come later in this set. I think it's in Love Boat Captain, a couple songs later, that you notice they do the same thing, and it's like, oh no, that is definitely crowd that's singing that. And the Name They Gave Me section is what I'm talking about here. Crowd was audible on that. I just thought it was just, oh, give me a crowd like this every single time. This is an A-plus crowd, along with the band being in their A-plus game. You can't ask for much more.
Yeah, the crowd is all over in this recording, and you can definitely feel it too. There's like a lot of reactions upon certain parts, certain songs, and the other thing that I really like about this version is like something that you were saying before as well. Even though that is a super high-paced, fast-loaded version of Brain of J, it has so much articulation, and you can understand everything that they're playing, because sometimes they get a little messy, but in this one, no. I mean, it was perfectly executed, and just, again, another really good delivery for the song.
At the end, Ed changes the lyrics to "Soon the whole world will be deceased." And yeah, there's going to be a couple of line changes at this show, and that's just one small example of that. Worldwide Suicide closes out this section, but the first three, I think, are enough to kind of give you the sense of where the direction of this show is going. Worldwide Suicide is being played every single night at this point, so they're on top of it, but those first three really define how this show is kicked off. So Ed says, "Here we are and here you are. It was beautiful, classic San Diego day here. We tried to make the day memorable, and it's already been with the advent of having Sonic Youth on the stage earlier. The last song was about suicide, and the next song is about love. It seems like maybe the only thing that can prevent suicide is love, because love is free. It's one of those precious natural resources, and I'm already feeling it from you tonight." The next section here is Love Boat Captain, Gone, and Even Flow. So, as mentioned, the crowd is certainly singing. They are doing that intro to Love Boat Captain without any prompting, like, here, you take it. Nope, they're just doing it. Another fantastic version, and even though they do the "Let the Show Begin" line during song 6, you know I don't like when they do that. I will accept it because the show has begun, clearly, but the crowd responds to that. So I'll accept it on this one. But don't expect me next week, if we do another version of Love Boat Captain, to be on top of that, because, yeah, not happening. So Ed tries to get the crowd invested at the end, too, and some drunks dude starts screaming, what? Like it's a, Raw's War in the Ruthless Aggression era. I know that means nothing to you, but it will mean something to somebody. But again, like just a revved up version befitting of what we've gotten thus far. And the transition into Gone is superb for this.
The tone that you can get in Gone too is just exquisite. This is where I geek out a little bit, because sometimes we don't pay a lot of attention to what Ed does, but like all those chord changes and make the song so pensive, kind of like the dark notes that he used for the interpretation of this, and what he chose to play is just, it's so good. He is the main element of the song. Like the other three guys actually, they're just like tagging along with whatever he's playing, and he's the main element that we should listen into this, and he makes the song so powerful in the way that he's interpreting his guitar with the song,
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's kind of the dynamic that makes that song work, and kind of fits in such a unique spot that you can follow a song like Love Boat Captain, which is pretty similar, kind of a darkish intro that gets you to a fiery crescendo. And once you find those moments and those surges in Gone, and they kind of escalate, like that gets you revved up, and it's a good balance getting you before Even Flow, because you're going to get a big time even flow here. It's 2006. If you know the stories, well, the stories are still being written and they are unchanged at this point. Mike, while soloing his brains out, I think 2006, it doesn't quite matter what Mike is doing, even though it's fantastic, because the show is Matt fucking Cameron, and this drum solo is just electric. He is playing up the crowd and he's turning into a huge moment. I mean, Filthy Phil's all over the place. We can play that if you want, which I know you do. Overall, a very empowering rendition of the song, and the crowd is red hot for all of it. Filthy Phil's!
Something that I've always admired is how he can get so flashy over the solo, but then at the end, he will know how not to make it very long and like dreadful. It's precise, it's powerful, but then it will allow the rest of the band just to get in and continue with the same intensity. So also very common thing around this time, the crowd taking it at the end. Like a lot of Ed was just basically saying like, all right, you take it, and a lot of singing from the crowd at the end of Even Flow around 2006. But a really good version. And the next song that we have also is pretty cool. Something that I think a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention of how good of a song it is too.
Well, I'll say with Cameron, before we kind of move on to that point, is that you get exactly what you want out of Pearl Jam with Cameron in terms of a drum solo. But if you go to something like a Tool show, the drum solos are completely different. Like that's when you're getting like 10 minutes of Danny Carey. And some bands can do that, and it worked for those bands. But if you did that with Cameron, it would be very strange. He's not that kind of drummer. You want to go right back into the rock and roll. But yeah, these solos in this era should not be taken lightly. So, as you said, that song that you're alluding to there is Unemployable. That's going to be followed with Wasted Reprise and then Better Man. No life wasted after Wasted Reprise, which is not always the case. Better Man was sometimes used in a good amount of those versions in 2006. So what I'm going to mention about Unemployable is that there's a really good lyric change at the end where he starts to sing Scared Alive, We're All Here to Die. And I thought that that was really interesting that he brought that to attention. Just little things, little ways of interpreting the songs that he's doing very early on are just interesting, and you wonder what's going on in his head during the show.
Yeah, and musically, this song for me, it means a lot. I don't know why around this time I was so attached to it, but I've always felt that musically it was something that it was so different to what they were trying to do around that time that it's very much a standout around that time. All the use of stuff that they were doing and all the elements that they were trying to include in a song, that it has a powerful message in a very melodic song. You will expect maybe that kind of message is something that will have maybe a darker melody, but it's very uplifting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect basis for what you would expect a Springsteen song to have, because Springsteen has that very much upbeat kind of guitar feel to it. And a lot of people have compared it to Springsteen, which it's pretty much in that wheelhouse. He writes tons of songs that way. Fine performance, but when we get into Wasted Reprise and Better Man, I think that's where you really get to figure out the crowd, and that's where I got my crowd points here. So, look, they are hot for the reprise. I don't remember the last time that I'd be able to say that a crowd was like singing at capacity for the Wasted Reprise.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know what was up to the crowd, especially with Wasted Reprise, but they were into it. I mean, you can hear it, and they were absolutely into it. And it's a pretty cool transition to Better Man too. And I'm a sucker for the Save It for Later tag. So whatever you get that tag, I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah. And I'll get into the tag in just a second, but I think a lot of what this show in this venue is, because when they go down to San Diego, they usually play here. So it was called the Cox Arena at the time. Now it's the Viejas Arena, and it's where the San Diego State basketball team plays. And it's a small arena, 12,000 people. And I remember some people sending me videos during the show a couple of years ago. They were all waiting in GA, and they got brought into the arena. And it's so unique because when you walk in, you don't like walk to the floor. You're not like on the floor at some level. You have to start at the top and then kind of walk all the way down. That's how small this place is that you don't have enough entries into certain aspects of the arena. So they had to walk all the way down to get to the floor by GA, which is just super interesting. But the sound always reverberates so well. You're able to hear so many voices from this because I think it's just a lot more intimate than some of your bigger, basketball, hockey arenas that you have where professional sports teams are playing in those arenas. Like, those can be a little bit spacious, but this is very compact, and you also have the back that's filled up too, which obviously adds a little bit to the sound. But this crowd was very, very good, and going from the reprise into Better Man, they're on top of it, and Ed kind of just takes a step back and says, okay, you, and they go off. But yeah, the tag at the end, you're thinking to yourself, because they do the Save It for Later, and he's kind of singing the Save It for Later in the verse melody, kind of like the 2,000 Other Dirty Lovers. He's singing just Save It for Later. And you think to the actual Save It for Later full song and how they would do that like just every now and again in this era. But I have to mention it because it feels like a relevant story. I feel like they can't not do a full Save It for Later now because of the bear. The impact that song has had from the bear, I think, has changed the whole identity of the song and the tag moving forward, to the point that Ed actually did the legitimate intro that he had from that version that they played on the show. I don't think you can go back now to just doing a Don't Run Away bit.
Yeah, people will associate the song with the show now, and I guess if the expectation is to have the tag, is you got to have the whole thing. They just can't run away from it right now, I guess.
They don't run away.
Yeah, they don't run away.
Run away, run away, run away, run away. But will they let you down? That's what we need to know.
I won't let you down.
Don't let me down. This can dissolve quickly, and I won't let it. So that's a good section right there. Let's get into the next one. He introduces Satan's Bed as being kind of a surf song in a way, rooted in Seattle, and all surf songs need is to have one thing: waves, cars, or the devil, or girls who are the devil. But this one's about the devil. And Satan's Bed is going to be followed by another Vitalogy song, and Not For You, and then a great version of You Are. I really loved this version of Satan's Bed. I thought it was so much fun. And one of the things that I noticed right from the jump is that when you get to the first chorus, Mike is kind of doing that wail, that like little wailing noise, and he usually saves that for the later choruses. And I love how he kind of brought that to the attention earlier. It just kind of shows what mode this band is early on.
Yeah, it feels like one of those songs that you could see in those old like surf movies. They were like kind of like playing in the back. That's how it felt for me. Great version. But yeah, Mike did recover a couple of things of the original track at the beginning that he was not playing around that time, or he doesn't play now. He only added at the end. But it's a fun sadist bed, and sometimes just you just need that kind of like surf song in between just to get you ready for, not for you in this case, but then I mean it's another one that stands out in the show.
Oh, absolutely. You Are was phenomenal from this. How much of a difference is this You Are from other versions of You Are? Because the way that Stone's guitar is going off with the drum machine kind of sounds almost as if it has like a little extra distortion to it. Like it sounds like hard. Usually the song kind of sounds a little bit more ethereal in a way, but this sounded like it had some bite to it. How and what are they doing in order to make that happen sonically?
Yeah, well, the combo hasn't changed. He's always going to use the Korg drum machine and the Sansamp preamp. But my belief is it has to do with the equipment that you were using at that time, because sometimes in later eras, UR can feel a little bit more like metal-ish. It sounds maybe sometimes too choppy. This sounds rock. It sounds very harsh, but it has certain kind of softness that allows you to hear every single detail that it goes through the drum machine. I 100% believe that it's equipment that they were using around that time. I think that's my answer for that.
So Ed will tee up and still say, hey, that was Mike McCready right there, and here's Mike McCready. This is a song written by him. And that's where we get to see the double neck guitar come out, and they're going to do Inside Job. And Life Wasted and Rear Mirror are going to follow and end your main set after that. But a little bit on Inside Job here that we can dig into, because I want to talk a little bit about the double neck. Now, immediately when listening to this, first of all, the musical interlude for this is nothing short of incredible. With the double neck, it feels like you get a little bit of a different tone than you do now. And I wonder if there's a difference between how the song kind of amplifies, and maybe it's due to, is there just a little bit more distortion on it? Is he using some whammy there or some wah? Is there something going on? Because I compared this to a more recent version of Inside Job, and it feels a little bit more clean on that. So what does the double neck give you in a song like this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you don't know what a double neck guitar is, it's just basically a double neck guitar that it was made for you not to change straps with another instrument. So in this case, this guitar is the Gibson EDS 1275. And if you're wondering who made this guitar famous, it's a guy who used to play in a band, and they wrote the song called Starway to Heaven. Maybe you have listened to that song at some point in your life. But what's the difference in between a 12-string and a 6-string? A 12-string is going to be two strings, different octaves. So one is going to be lower, the other is going to be higher. Now, what Randy's referring here is the fact that Mike, around this time too, he was using a lot of chorus. He was using that kind of like a little wavy chorus at the end, which combined with that 12-string guitar is going to sound a little bit more distorted with the ring that the instrument is going to give you, which right now you don't have that because he's using a Les Paul, which is only a 6-string guitar, but that's going to give you a little bit more space, so it's going to sound less crowded. But actually it creates the impression of being more distorted, but the guitar is quite clean. But that chorus effect with the combination of the 12-string is going to give you that kind of like more distorted sound that Randy was referring to.
That clears a lot of things up, and that's definitely understandable there. And on top of what we just said, I think Inside Job at the time was still kind of progressing and still getting in people's heads. I remember just my first take of the Avocado record. I don't think Inside Job was really like something I was focusing on as much, because at the time I think I was really into the rocker stuff instead of the more pensive, emotional storytelling stuff. And it wouldn't like come to me later, and I probably happened before the Gleason moment, but I think this is a really good example of a song that had a better late in life run than it did, even though this version is phenomenal, than it did at the period of time when they were promoting a record it was on. I think the other song that you can compare that to is maybe Present Tense, that it just kind of grew an appreciation for it as they went along and continued playing over the years. It got better. People started to, get tattoos with the lyrics. I think both of those songs' trajectories kind of mirror each other. And while you listen to this performance of Inside Job, you're like, I don't see a difference between how they do it now and how they did it then, because it still sounds phenomenal either way. I think once you get to visualize a moment like what happened at Wrigley with Steve Gleason, the meaning takes on a whole new life.
Absolutely. I mean, for sure. This is one of the songs that it has aged so well. And I think once the fans who started to age with the band as well, I think this song became something more. The performance here, it's great. It's a great live version, but later on, it's just the song became something else. It's just like, it has a different meaning. It has a different weight. And it's so meaningful for so many fans out there,
I think that's a really good point that you bring up, because usually the band is like almost like an age up from the fan base in a way, where they're in a mature spot than maybe some of what their fans are in. And when their fans get to the spot that the band is in at a certain time period, then they start to feel those feelings, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I remember when I heard Inside Job for the first time, it was just kind of like, oh, this is a really good song. But now, when I analyze the lyrics and I see the weight that the song contains and what it means to people that is close to me, it's just a different thing. Like watching The Last Dance with Present Tense as the closing song of the documentary, it's just like, whoa, it really hits you on a different level.
Yep, those are two touchstone moments from those songs' trajectories that help them absolutely accelerate to a level that I don't think the band even expected to have. So, yeah, good points there. Let's don't want to gloss over Life Wasted, but I think the point for Life Wasted here comes from the transition. It's a killer energy for this song. And also, outside of 2006, you don't get to really hear a standard tuning version of Life Wasted. They go to the down tune pretty quickly after this era. So you don't get to hear too many that are in the normal format that you know of. But I think it's within that improv intro that is fascinating to me, that happens before Rearview Mirror here.
Thought about it, never again. Never going back again. Never going back again. Never going back again.
To me, that's a moment that like heightens the excitement for the song. It's something that you can clearly say is not going to be something that they're going to get every single night, but also at the end of the show, you're thinking about shit that you just saw, like what just happened, and you're like, wow, they added in lyrics from Life Wasted, transitioning out of that into Rearview Mirror, that's something that you don't get. And also, the moment doesn't feel premeditated at all, if you know what I mean. It just feels like it happens and it was there and it made for something memorable. And that's the best kind of moments that you can get out of this band, are just ones that pop up unintentionally and make magic.
Yeah, the meaning of both songs got connected somehow, because before listening to the show, I would never thought that that would make sense, but actually it does. It gives you something really special for a song that we have heard so many times, but when you get this kind of little story that is going to entangle maybe things that you thought that they were not related, it's cool. It really makes you have a better appreciation for a song like Life Wasted that maybe is not commonly played as of now, but interconnecting those two, it does make sense to me now. And after listening to the show, it's just like it kind of closes the circle a little bit.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating here too is that when you get to the bridge, Ed starts singing the lyrics to the Todd Rundgren song Time Heals. The lyrics that sometimes you'll get to hear tagged in black. Time heals all wounds that no one can see. I think it's interesting, and I would not be surprised if the lyrics are sort of interconnected, because we know what the subject matter of Life Wasted is. We had an episode a couple weeks ago about Johnny Ramone and his death, and it has a little bit of something to do with that. And maybe that's kind of the way him telling himself after that song, maybe he's thinking about it and he's saying, you know what, it's been 2 years, time is healing these wounds. It's just a thought, but I wonder if it's interconnected. But the bridge of this song here, I mean, this is a legitimate 10-minute version of Rearview Mirror. You look at it time-stamped and it's like 10 minutes, but no, they play up to the full 10 minutes. It is absolutely barn burner phenomenal. I mean, Ed's breaking out the EBow and sounds great on the EBow. Matt has a really fun beat going before the bass kind of creeps in and gets people all super excited. I don't think I've ever heard him do something as specific as that on Rearview Mirror before. What was your favorite little bit of this bridge that stuck out to you? Because there's a lot of talking points.
Yeah, I know that we always focus on guitars and effects and all that kind of stuff, but for me, my favorite part was what Matt was doing. It felt very, very different, very unique. And it kind of like took the song from point A to point D. It skipped B and C, but it just works. And I was kind of like, oh my God. I mean, I kind of forgot that they were doing around this era. And it was fun to listen to again. That was a killer main set, and there's more to come, a lot more to come. So let's pause for station identification and talk about some things here. Before we get into things here with Patreon and Town Hall stuff, I just want to mention that tonight, as a matter of fact, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, we are doing a new episode of Destined to Remember. That is our little tour discussion show that we do on Facebook and YouTube through Touring Fan Live. It is myself, Anthony from Touring Fan Live, and Dave Jantausch from Live Footsteps. It's always a very entertaining show. I love doing content with those guys, and it's always streaming in the Pearl Jam podcast community group, so make sure that you're joined up on there.
and you'll be able to find it, or you can go to Touring Fan Live's YouTube page. But something that I just want to throw out there is that during this episode, I'll be debuting the trailer for my brand new Pearl Jam tour documentary, and this one is 3 years in the making. I think many of you who were around at that time in the 2022 tour might know what I'm talking about here, but you might not. So definitely tune in. The trailer should be just debuted there, and then on Thursday I'll put it out to our YouTube page, so make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube if you want to check that out. And yeah, that should be that. So I'm not going to reveal anything else. I'll just let you guys sit and wait, and make sure you check out the live stream coming tonight, because it should be a lot of fun. We have a lot of good discussions and topics that we're prepared to go forth. So I do want to bring up that we did have our town hall last week, and we have a lot of great new ideas that I think we can start to get fleshed out in the next coming weeks and start to figure out here. Thank you for everybody that either came and joined us and shared some thoughts and feelings there. And also thanks to some people that just emailed and said, hey, like, this is what I like what you're doing, and wonder if you're interested in doing this. It's important because we can just keep doing things until the cows come home, and we can just keep on with this show. But honestly, we want to be challenged. We don't want to just have the show and then say goodnight. We want to be able to kind of expand our presence a little bit with you guys, especially the people that are really interacting and want more interaction, because I think that the show has a lot of layers to it. I'll talk about some historical aspects and storytelling. Javier, you'll talk about some technical aspects, and there are things to expand upon that maybe we're not quite giving you in an episode. You might be listening and be like, I can't tie this in with any of my common knowledge. This is why it's good to talk to some people, because that's not what we realize when we're talking about this. So, there are ideas that we have of putting together kind of like almost like a handbook where we can go through the previous episode and be like, all right, here's explaining this to a further level than what we talked about previously in the episode. There's other ideas where we're going to start doing teaser episodes to come out early in the week to kind of get you fired up for listening to the podcast on Wednesdays. And maybe we can go a little bit deeper into that. But also just like little things that you guys suggested too, just about getting people together and just talking about this band a little bit more, which, yeah, we should be doing on a more common basis. But I think as much as you guys want to put into this and interact, we're going to be really excited to have that. It's all going to be about how we interact together. And if you guys are interested in the next level stuff and want to be involved outside of just listening to episode after episode, then you're going to get all that. And hopefully we kind of have a really good communication between both sides here, where we can get something big out of this and you guys can kind of continue to enhance your fandom, because that's really all we're trying to do. Is we're trying to take something that you already have a passion for, and the hope is that we can help expand that passion. I mean, Javier and I are both hardcore fans. I think it's pretty obvious, and we're just kind of like you guys. The only thing different is that our voices are kind of on it, but sharing ideas is important here. And without some of that, and without knowing some of that from you guys, I don't know what kind of direction that we would take. But I think that was a really good way to interact with people. And I think we'll be doing a lot of new things in the future. And some things will be positive, and some things there might not be any more Evolution episodes, like that kind of thing. But there'll be other stuff, and maybe stuff more often if we don't do big time research projects. But also we'll be able to kind of do more things where we'll get together and we'll talk about the band. And we want it to be everybody. We don't want it to just be, hey, just our friends that always get together, because that is going to happen no matter what. But the more voices that we can get in, the more interaction that we have, is just positive for all of us. And it's positive for your listening experience. I know it's a lot because these episodes are a lot. They're very long, but if you're into it, if that's what you're interested in, then hop aboard the train. it doesn't hurt to get involved. Javi, anything else that you want to expand on, or?
No, I just want to say thank you to the people who joined and provided feedback, because it's very interesting for me to just also listen new people coming into these groups and just providing a new perspective. And I'm excited because now I have my head going, like with the Gear Garage ideas and little dictionary that we're going to be making and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited, and I'm excited. I just want to say thank you to everybody who sent an email, showed up, sent a message, because we take that feedback very, very seriously.
Yep, absolutely. We thank everybody, and even people that had the intention on coming, like, we're open, just message. It doesn't hurt to just say hello. You know, we want to hear from people, and that's, again, how we continue moving the way that we do. So, look, there will be changes coming to Patreon in the near future. We will announce that at some point. The tiers will change. Again, it's not set in stone yet, but things to think about when we're starting to prepare for the upcoming tour. I'll just put it out that way. However, right now, if you want to join, I think it's a perfect time to be joining, because soon when the tiers change, the tiers will change financially a little bit. So if you want to get grandfathered in, especially for $1 a month, I can't promise that we're going to be doing that tier for very much longer. I'll just put it out that way. So if you want to join on Patreon, donate, help us out however you can. It is much appreciated. And again, it's just going to go and help us create more and make us want to do more for the platform, and also will help us on tour and help us get out to as many places as humanly possible. So if you can, head on over to patreon.com/live on 4 legs, or you can download the Patreon app and search for Live on 4 legs, or you can go to liveon4legs.com and click the become a patron button, and that's how you can get involved. And yeah, there will be all these different things coming in the near future. I think you guys will enjoy what version 3, I'm going to call this, of Live on 4 legs is, since we are on our 3rd full-time co-host here. So version 3. All right, back to the rock. So this is a big speech here. This is an important story to be told. We won't play the whole thing, but we'll share, I think, the big moments. So here's kind of what Ed had to say. So he's talking a little bit about the Vegas show that I mentioned before, and he said he hated the gig, and I thought it was a fine gig for what it was, but okay, he's out there doing it, so can't argue with his opinion. And then he tells a story, and he suggests that anybody who doesn't want to hear a story, go to the restroom or go make out with your girl, because it's going to be a little bit long. And he says it has something to do with education and an educator. If you've had a teacher that has changed your life, raise your hand. I'm raising mine. Javi, you're raising yours. And then in all this, he promotes funding for education in the U.S. And he says he had a teacher who got him through life, and says there was a small campaign to get a theater named after him. Obviously, as we mentioned before, the teacher's name is Clayton E. Liggett. And if you recognize that name, I just want to throw that out here now. Ed was in a movie recently, I think it was like about finding love at an airport or finding love in an airplane. I don't remember the name of the movie. I can find it in a second. But Ed was the voice of, I guess, the terminal voice, and his credit in the movie is Clayton E. Liggett, not Eddie Vedder. I thought that was just phenomenal, the way that he did that, and I'm sure that had a lot of meaning for him. But he said funding from tonight's tickets go into that theater, and then he proceeds to tell the story about when he got the call that Clayton had passed away. It's when they were recording Mirrorball, and then he starts to strum out the chords of Long Road like he was ringing a bell. And that's where we'll get into the story.
And I hit the chord again. And I think I was trying to like ring a bell, right? I was trying to ring a bell to say that we lost one of the good ones. This is an important moment in history, and we lost one of the good ones. So I kept hitting the bell for like 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And then the other guys and Neil that came into the room without saying anything or anything. They just picked up their instruments and started hitting the bell with me. We were all recognizing. We're all ringing the bell. And I went up to the mic and then this song happened, yeah? So this night is for Clayton and this song is for Clayton. Thanks for listening.
This is one of the all-time stories when it comes to this band and connecting songs with stories of how they're created. I can't think of a more genuine way that a song has been written in this catalog that, he was sitting there strumming his chords almost like ringing the bell, as he said, and then the rest of the band comes in and without saying a word reacts to it. And anytime that you can bring that background into why a song you've heard so many times exists, you have an immediate connection. And on top of that, I think the majority of us can say that we've had a teacher that has influenced our lives. And I've had one as well. I'll tell a little story to preface this. So I was in maybe my second or third year of college. I went to college for 5 years, so I can't say sophomore or junior because it's all bungled up. But I joined up the radio station. And the radio station was not a big deal at the school. It was a very small walk-in closet, basically. You sat at the board, you can get like maybe one other person in there, and there was a desk in the back. It was very, very small. The office that I'm sitting in recording this episode right now is bigger. So I decided to do the show with a friend of mine at the time, and we wanted to just have fun and just kind of do some crazy shit. And I think the episode that we kind of had was a little bit like, I don't know, Pee-wee's Playhouse on crack or something like that. It was so fried and out there. And I remember the radio station manager, Professor Bob Stern, who is a major part of the story. The show was on a Friday. He had met with me on Monday. He's like, "You can't put that over on air. What are you doing? This is garbage." And then I was kind of like, you know what? You're right. It kind of is garbage. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I do want to be a professional at this someday. I do want to kind of understand how to do it for real. So I took his advice, the first time of many times that I would take his advice, and I told Greg, who I was doing the show with, I said, I'm going to do the show by myself this weekend. And it didn't matter to him because he had other ambitions, so it wasn't a big deal, but I went and I did a radio show, and I got like 3 calls from Bob during it saying how tremendously impressed he was. And I was like honestly kind of shocked because I don't think I had anybody in my life told me that I was talented at anything, that I was like good at it, that was meant for something, I wasn't good at sports. I didn't have like a niche really. I had a high school teacher that liked some of my projects that I did in my multimedia class and photography, but it didn't go too much further past that. It was just like, wow, these guys do a great job. And that was that. But like from that day on, Bob took an interest in what I was doing and really helped kind of shape and mold what I wanted to be. And not just that, but like the best thing that he could have done for me is give me the confidence that I needed to survive. Because I wasn't surviving very well at that time. I was, dealing with my own emotional inadequacies and mental instabilities, and it was extremely tough. And I didn't like going to therapists or doing anything like that. I didn't think it helped because I thought that it made it seem like I had a problem. And I also didn't bring it up with friends because that's not the thing at the time when you're 19 years old that you bring up with friends because you're just scared of what they'll think and maybe they'll walk away. But, you know, I'm not going to get into the time of the water, the how, but there was a time where I needed him and he said all of the right things to me to make me feel like I was okay, to make me feel like I was a normal human being. You know, like it was just that kind of confidence that he gave me that helped me want to get through. And sometimes you need that from people. Because if you keep depending on yourself, you'll sometimes, when you're in a position that you can't really control yourself, you'll find ways to let yourself down. And you have to, whether it's a parent, whether it's somebody else for guidance, you have to lean on somebody for guidance. And hopefully you have those people that are open to guiding you. And I'm so thankful that I did. And throughout the whole entire time that I was in college, I leaned on him for so much and maybe too much, but he was just the kind of person that wanted to see me succeed because he had so much faith in knowing that I was going to do the things that I would do. I'd go on and work an industry job for almost 10 years. And then doing something like this, like, Bob passed away and I had lost touch with him for a little bit. You know, he wasn't somebody that really answered his phone a whole lot. And I think his death was rather sudden and not really discussed a whole lot. And it really shook me. And I think about him a lot, if not every day, then almost every day. And that doesn't happen with other people that I've lost in my life. So, um, I credit him for helping mold me into the human being that I am. And I don't think that you can give a better compliment to somebody in your life than that. And, even to the point where after being fired from a major broadcast company, I went for a year and I was completely lost. I did not know what I wanted to do and was not happy doing what I was doing. And I needed some kind of guidance. And although he had passed, I I don't know what I believe. I usually don't believe in anything, but somehow I feel like something connected the dots to where if he were here, he would have guided me in the direction that would have created this podcast. And again, without him and his impact on my life, this would not even be a thought in my mind. So, while these performances are incredible and they evoke so much emotion out of me, that's what I have to say because performance wise, if it can make you feel that way, if it can make you think that about somebody and kind of think about things in retrospect like that, I don't think there is anything more to say. So for both Long Road and Comeback, I just had that on my mind the whole entire time.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Not easy, but needed to be said for sure.
I'm pretty sure that wherever he's at, he's happy that you're doing this.
I think so. I don't think he would have liked Pearl Jam. I don't think he did. But
Hopefully he wouldn't like Nickelback. We would have issues.
no, he liked opera music. He was very much into opera, and he was
Let's go.
yeah. But I think he would have just been happy that I was doing something that in turn made other people happy. I mean, he was a radio guy for a very long time and had his share of stories that, they could be tall tales and you can believe what you want. And sometimes these stories were different than other stories that he would tell to other people, but it didn't matter because you wanted to believe the best in them. And there's a couple of stories that were absolutely 100% honest to God truth that he did while being in radio. And it kind of shows what kind of human being he is. So I appreciate everybody for listening to that. Just really personal to me. And I think if you can't connect with a story like that, then I think what you can connect with is you can connect with somebody having a connection with this band that has brought something this important in their life out of them. I know that most people that listen to this band, the high percentage of people in this community have dealt with things in their life and have used the term Pearl Jam saved my life. And, no different for either of us. But this is one of those kind of moments where I can really connect with what Ed is saying with the song. All right. So back into the set. Ed mentions some small town names before going in and playing Small Town, and that's going to get you Small Town and Crazy Mary back to back. Ed got a really great reaction from the crowd after everything that transpired in those two songs. I'd imagine that there wasn't a dry eye in the house. There wasn't a dry eye in this house, I'll tell you that much. But, oh man, this crowd on Crazy Mary is once again just taking control. And control would transfer over to both Boom and Mike once you got into the solo. But, wow. I mean, the place is just electric, and they're throwing haymakers back and forth at each other that feel like a big-time prize fight. This is just a special encore. Long Road in itself is a special moment. Come Back, kind of attached to that, is special. This Crazy Mary is spectacular. And then we're going to get into two songs in a second that absolutely bookend the whole thing and just make it one of the best encores I've ever heard in my life.
The interaction in Crazy Mary is crazy. Just to repeat the same thing, the way that they go back and forth is just... Boom is so good about doing that. Like, he can play, he can solo the thing, but he's so gentle, like he can share that with some other players. And maybe not all the keyboard players can do that, but he does it perfectly fine, and he's such a team player in this one, and they both shine. One of my favorite parts, because it's one of my favorite songs, and it's actually my unicorn, white elephant, whatever you want to call it, is the one that it comes after this, which it's very interesting because it's been a very long time since I've heard Crown of Thorns without Chloe in the intro.
Yes, so let's tee that up a little bit. So after Crazy Mary, Ed says, "It's science, but I just lit my cigarette off of Mike McCready's amp." Oh, that's special. And hopefully no fire marshals were there at that point. Well, the next song we've never played in San Diego, and we save it for special occasions. We're proud of being part of all the groups that came out of Seattle, and I was born in Chicago, and that's a hometown show, but for me and Matt, as well as Mike, have all spent formative years here in San Diego. I made enough toast to make you think that it was just the wine talking, but it's all me and all us. Thanks for being a part of this hometown homecoming. We'll play this. Some of you know it. It's a part of our history, and it's a part of why we're here tonight. So this is a great example of a few things. It's a great example of how this crowd is. It's a great example of how bootlegs sound at this time. And it's just a great example of utilizing songs in a perfect way that makes sense and fit for especially what you went through with this encore. I'm just going to play an example here. First, you're going to hear what I consider to be maybe the top surprise moment of 2024, and that would be Hunger Strike from Sydney. I'm going to play that for you for a second. I wanted you to listen to the crowd's response. Here it is.
I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths
Okay,
of
so what do you get from that? First off, with no fault of its own, the band was playing in a massive outdoor stadium compared to a 12,000 seat arena, a lot more intimate, obviously, where you're able to hear the crowd a lot closer. The crowd was kind of a distance away from the stage, which I can see would be complicated. However, I've heard stadium shows before that have sounded pretty good in terms of getting the crowd involved, and the crowd mics were better served. That little snippet that you just heard of Hunger Strike, that sounded like maybe they had been playing it every couple of nights. Not like it was just some song that was resurrected from the dead that nobody thought would ever had any business being played at a Pearl Jam show again. I don't think you get the feel of that by listening to the bootleg. And now I'm going to play you the beginning of Crown of Thorns and listen to the crowd's enthusiasm and excitement. You can hear individual people go, "Oh my God," like just legitimately freaking out. Listen to how they react.
You ever hear the story of Mr. Faded Door?
You almost can't compare the two. Just completely two different worlds here. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm trashing on the Sydney crowd for not reacting to Hunger Strike. I don't think it's quite their fault. I think it's just, if anything, it's get the mixes sounding better, but there's no reaction like the one that you just heard from this show. Holy moly, that is a crowd that is invested every single step of the way.
That would have been me amplified by 12,000.
Your moment's coming. Your moment's coming.
That would have been me. And again, insane version with no need of the intro. But now that you said the meaning of all this combination of songs, it kind of makes sense. It's kind of like, this is where we are, this is the memory, this is where we come from, and this is why we maybe have survived. So it has a lot of more meaning after the message now that I'm looking at the set from a different perspective. So thank you for that. You did that.
Well, I call him like I see him, and I could not help but think how incredible that reaction was, and sort of, in my eyes, like, why can't we have those reactions to just about everything of that ilk? It's super special, and the version on top of that is just out of this world as well. It feels, once again, like every song they're playing is happening for a reason, kind of like the San Diego show from a couple of years ago, where he specifically says we're going to play songs that have a connection to San Diego. And Crown of Thorns, I think it does have a connection, because the Andy connection is Ed's gateway into meeting these guys. Of course, it's the sad, unfortunate situation, but that's how they're connected. There is no Eddie without Andy. And after the song, Ed had kind of teed up the next song by saying, in between the journey from here to Seattle was this next song, and Stone wrote both of them, so I'm going to toast Stone here. And of course, like, Alive following Crown of Thorns, I mean, that is amazing in and of itself. Like tying those things together. That's the best thing that Pearl Jam does, is just tying the stories and just making them come to life. And speaking of life, this song is called Alive, but it absolutely came alive when you got to this monster solo. Lights out. Like, I don't remember the last time a live solo absolutely like blew me to the back wall. This was untouchable. Where has this been, and what the fuck is Mike doing here?
A lot of things. Let me tell you that when I heard this one again, because I've heard the show a few years ago, and when I heard it live again, I'm like, shit, I need to practice so much. Like, I need to continue to practice so much. This thing is just fire. It's just outstanding. The solo at the end is just like, get out of the venue, get out of the arena, lights down, this is done. You know, it's just Mike at his finest. Outstanding. There's no words to describe it. Seriously, it's just too good.
I'll try and describe it. It makes every other night where they play the song sound tamer than Telecare. That's how I'll describe it. And no, Live is not a tame song, but this is how intense this was. That's what you got to understand. All right, Encore 2, everybody. Encore 1 was phenomenal. As I kind of briefly mentioned, one of the best encores. We'll probably start talking about that when we get into the rating and everything. But Encore 2 is no slouch in and of itself. So Ed thanks everyone and says the next gig is in Los Angeles, and they got their work cut out for them. And so, see what I do. I badmouth the crowd from the night before, and I badmouth the crowd we're about to play for. But I promise in my heart, I would never say anything bad to you. We got a big rock show in front and a little club show in the back, and we're going to play towards them. The next section of 3 songs is Last Kiss, Comatose, and Leash. Interesting combo there. It's the mid-2000s Cabana version of Last Kiss, where it feels like I've been at a bar on a beach where there's like a musician or two playing Last Kiss, and they're playing it like a beach version. I feel like I've been in that moment before, because Last Kiss is one of those songs that somebody might bring up in that situation. And it would probably sound like this.
I don't know. It could be the regular tuning. We haven't heard like regular tuning in a very long time. But also, this is a really good example of how Ed was stretching himself out around this time with his voice. But it sounds like a couple of guys having fun in a beach and they're just trying to play a cover of a song that they don't know how to play pretty well. But yeah, that's how it sounds to me, at least.
It's fun. You won't get me talking much about Last Kiss, but I kind of like these versions. They're just sort of light and airy, and when you turn to the back, you can just think about all the people that are celebrating with it. But like Comatose coming out of that feels like just a punch to the face back into the electricity of the set. And then you get Comatose, and then you get Leash. Like, I mean, the 2 songs that are really punch you in the mouth kind of songs. What about Comatose just worked for this?
Well, let me say that Ed didn't get lost singing Comatose.
That helps.
Yeah, because around this time he could get a little confused. But I love the punk riff. I love like how hardcore and raw it sounds. It's such a simple song, but it works. And this is a song that you gotta put in the regular tuning, man. I mean, it doesn't.
100% agree.
Oh yeah. It's just it doesn't work down tune, but cool version, and it makes me feel nostalgic when I hear Comatose from 2006 because it makes you want to, I don't know, just throw the computer screen somewhere when you're at work.
Well, Leash following that up, I mean, look, I think we got to talk about the storyline of Leash for 2006, and that is the redemption story. After years of not playing it, after years of signs seeing people write and scream, play Leash U, fill in the blanks, I think either they felt pressure or they were just like, okay, now's the time. And they did it. Back in Boston in May, they brought it back after the Letterman moment where he brings the sign. He says, we will not be playing Leash tonight, and everybody booed, but it seemed like they had a plan for it. And it's not like it was a one-time thing. They went back to it a bunch of times. It was played 14 times on this tour. So they regularly brought it out and kind of spread the wealth throughout everybody in the world, essentially, because they were doing so many dates on so many tours. But it wasn't like Boston was the only city that was able to get it, and they seemed to put it back into somewhat of a rotation. But also, this is the time where they kind of changed the lyric a little bit, and we weren't getting the get out of my fucking face. It was get out of my lucky face. And yeah, that, I mean, I guess you gotta make some kind of change, but not that one.
Yeah, we need the get out of my fucking face line. You just
Right.
can't replace it. You can't.
What's a
replace
lucky
it.
face? What the fuck is a lucky face?
I don't know.
You get a face of like a Lucky Charm, like a Shamrock or some shit like that.
I don't know. Now I
Not in
cannot
the
unsee it.
Not in the spirit of Leash, that's for sure. So we'll move forward into the first ever version. He says here, we'd like to play the only song that has been played live off the last record, where we were waiting to get to the coast, and this one's called Big Wave.
Used to be conversation, and now I want a nation. Yeah, something celebration. Yeah, a million adaptations. Yeah, got me up, big way, got me up, big way, got me up, big way. Got me up, big way, got me up, big way, got me up, big way. I feel on me, until me, years ago, can't you see the ocean side? Running down, tired of us, and I'm laid up on me. Being so kind, let me ride. Every nomination, selecting this
I actually remember reading on like a forum or talking to somebody, but essentially what I remember is that at a show prior to this, it could have been on the East Coast, it could have been before this on the West Coast or in the Midwest, somebody in the front had said to Ed, like, Ed, we getting Big Wave, and he shouts to them, I'm saving it. And it was very clear that this was the place that he wanted to save it for. And now, like, yeah, it somewhat matters if they're on an ocean, but I mean, my joke is that they played it in Ottawa. And if you're going to play it in Ottawa, it can probably be played anywhere. So, you know, the big surf of Ottawa for sure. But we get bursts of speed and electricity. Usually when you get debuts, it's tentative, it's a little bit held back and reserved. And in this, it just is a testament of what the rest of the show is, just completely full-on, full-speed rocker. They just throw caution to the wind and just play their hearts out. It doesn't matter if they're off on a note or something like that. They just go with it.
And I like it. It's a song that it was worked. You can hear that. Because usually when you hear the song, you're kind of afraid that they're going to screw up the part where it's like a little bit of very unique rhythm, which is where they drag the notes. But this is perfect. I mean, if we have to make a ranking of the best performances for the first time ever for a Pearl Jam song, I think this will get to the top 5 for sure.
Wow. I think off the top of my head, my favorite might be Man of the Hour.
Hard to beat.
Yeah, from Benaroya. that's one of my favorite debuts that they've ever had. There were a couple debuts at that show. Fatal. I think there's one other that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, Man of the Hour is my favorite that I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, it could be a competition there. So Ed hands his guitar over to surfer Kelly Slater, a good friend of his that usually shows up at shows around this area. And he says he's taken me on waves that have put me and the band's future in jeopardy. So that will get to the guest spot for Rockin' in the Free World, a very fast Rockin' in the Free World. And they're going to close the night with Ledbetter. It's crazy how fast they're playing because it's not like they're trying to get out of there and break a curfew or anything like that. Both of these songs together are 15 minutes long, so they have time, but it's just the Ferrari engine that has been running this whole entire show. It was unstoppable. And right until the very end, I can picture myself in this crowd afterwards being like, holy crap, I need a beer, first of all, but then I need a long nap because boy, was that just in your face the whole entire time. And I've been at shows like that before and it felt like that. So, yeah, this was right up there.
Yeah, rocking on the steroids for sure. And then I love the fact that at around this time he was always saying like, Mike is gonna say goodbye tonight, and you always have this very mellow intro for Yo Ledbetter before he gets aggressive and also gets very into the national anthem because he was very into doing it as Jimmy used to do it in the 60s and the 70s.
We'll still hear it every now and again. Now we'll still get it. It's a little bit less common, and I think it comes in spots. Like, I know they didn't even play Ledbetter at the MSG show in 2022 on September 11th, but this was the final song of the night. They just played Star Spangled Banner. And yeah, I mean, it was something that he did. Mike's little tribute to Jimmy for sure. I remember there were a couple shows with that. Every Ledbetter that I went to had this for quite a while. So I was seeing this a lot in my early show intake, and that was pretty close to that time period. So boy, what did we just witness? You know, again, you're in that crowd, like you got to be feeling like you're at something you're going to remember for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The stories shared, the meaning behind the stories that they were shared, the connection in between the crowd, the response of the crowd, the set, performances, delivery is very, very, very hard to beat. So I think you know where I'm going with this.
Let's get to that point. When we get to that point, we have some songs to pick for our top three first. So let's get to that. You got your three?
I do have my three.
All right.
My number 3 is going to be Satan's Bed. My number 2 is going to be Alive. And my number 1 is going to be Long Road.
All right. So I just got to find a number 3 that's not the same. It wasn't going to be Satan's Bed, even though I like that performance. But man, it can just be anything from Ocean Severed Hand, Corduroy Brain of Jay to You Are to Inside Job to Rearview Mirror to Crown of Thorns.
You have a lot of options.
There's a ton, even Big Wave, you want to throw that in there. I am going to say, because, and I know I pick the song a lot for the top 3, but sometimes you just can't help it. And this is a 10-minute version, so I think I kind of can't help it. But the improv that happened prior to getting into Rearview Mirror really makes it stand out. So I'm going to put that at number 3. If this is a normal show, this might be number 1, but this is not no normal show. My number 2 is absolutely Alive, and my number 1 is absolutely Long Road. Okay. Moment of truth. We kind of teed it up in the beginning, like trying to find what the definitive 2006 show is. And I didn't listen to every single bit of this show in the past, but I heard the pieces that I've needed to hear. So now I have the full extent of this. I'm going to let you go first, but I think I kind of understand what's about to happen here.
We don't have a higher rating than 10. Otherwise, I will give it a higher rating than 10. But for me, this is a 10. If you want to understand what was going on around this time, this is the show that you need to listen to. For me, it's a 10. For me, it's a Hall of Famer.
I have to put some thought into it, but there's a lot of different shows that you can pick to be like the one that defines this era. And I think when you're just thinking about where the band was at the time and where they would be after this point, Ed started to become not just a good storyteller, but a great storyteller in 2006. And that's not just because they were on VH1 storytellers, but maybe that had some help that he was able to kind of take a moment and be in the spotlight and share some of the takes on songs. Maybe that did help, but this show has everything that you want from a 2006 show. It has insane performances. The new songs sound great. The old songs sound just as good. Stories that are lifelong, memorable Pearl Jam moments. You know, that element that we were looking for last week, that is the difference between either a 9 or a 9.5 that we were looking for in Tampa. Like, the difference is within the show. It 100% is there because touchstone moments, transcendent moments, you have that with Long Road. And if you have that in a show, as long as the rest of the show is tip top Pearl Jam at their best, you have a 10. And you're right. This kind of exceeds that in terms of excitement, in terms of how great this listen was. But this show is in the Live on Four Legs Hall of Fame. Indy, where does this show belong?
That belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum. Oh boy. These Hall of Fame shows, they don't come easy nowadays. It takes a lot to get Hall of Fame shows now. You know, we're not doing, you know, every other week being like, here's Seattle 2000 and here's PJ 20 and those kind of shows that are obvious shoo-ins. We don't have a lot of those shows to do anymore. So it's special whenever we are able to get into one in the Hall of Fame now. So our first induction into the 2025 Live on Four Legs Hall of Fame is San Diego 2006. Well-deserved. That's all. Well-deserved.
I can't be happier right now that a 2006 show is in the Hall of Fame where it should be.
Right? Right? I don't know how many from 2006 we have in the hall either. I really can't remember. Newcastle was one of those that I thought had a really good shot, and it just missed. I think I gave it a 10, and it just missed. But
Yeah.
I'll have to go through. I'll have to go through and look. But yes, as good of a representative that you can get from 2006 for sure. And hopefully we have done fans of that era proud. So thank you all for tuning into that. As for next week goes, we'll see if we can have a little streak. We are going to go back to a more recent show, and we're going to do Oklahoma City from 2022. Now, it's actually kind of funny because I went through and tried to figure out, like, okay, what states and countries have we not done yet? And we actually haven't done an Oklahoma show, believe it or not. And they've played in Oklahoma quite a bit. They've played Oklahoma City. They've played Tulsa. It's not like they don't head there. Actually, 2013 and 2014, they played a different city in Oklahoma both times. So they go back. And this was a really good show. That was the penultimate of the Gigaton tour. So we'll get to talking about that. A lot of like really good key moments that come from that show that kind of are tour defining too. So that'll be exciting to talk about that. And yes, once again, we are pushing back our Seattle 2024 episode, but we promise that will be in this month for sure. But also we're still looking for another show to cover in March and April. And I've been putting this out on social media. If you have a story that you want to tell and that you aren't on one of our tiers on Patreon where you are awarded an episode request, this is the way that you can do it. Tell your story, send in your story, and we'll put it up for vote. And at this point, we have precisely 0 stories that we have gotten submitted. So you have a pretty good leg up if you want to share your story from your favorite show. As long as we have not covered it, as long as it's not on our future for the schedule, send it in, request it, and we will put it into consideration for later this month. So, yes, that's what's coming forward for the future. And then once we get into April, we'll start to really hammer down preparing for the local shows that we'll get. So we'll do a show from Florida, then we'll do an Atlanta show, Nashville, and above and beyond. So thank you everybody for tuning in. And if you like what you heard and you want to get more involved, please make sure not that you're just subscribed to the podcast, because I say that every week. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, wherever you can get your podcasts on your subscriber, but also get involved on social media as well. I say it in the beginning, and I don't think enough people listen to that part, but I say it, follow us on Twitter. I'm still doing Twitter. I don't like it. It feels gross to me, but I'm still doing it. We are on Blue Sky as well, and you can search for us on Blue Sky. But I think some of the best participation that we do get is from our Facebook group, the Pearl Jam Podcast Community. So if you head on over there, join the group. We're a very, very fun group that we don't bitch and complain or, say negative things to people. If I see that, I make sure those people are out of there. Try to kind of control the whole thing, because other groups, we get it. It's social media and people can just be keyboard warriors, but we don't accept that around here. So if you're just looking for a normal group of people that enjoy talking about this band, please head over to Pearl Jam Podcast Community and join us over there. You are welcome. And also on Patreon, we started to do chat rooms over on Patreon now. So if you're checking in there, make sure that you join in and kind of let your voice be heard through that chat room. A lot of people have contributed so far, so make sure if you want to check that out, please do. But hey, normal things like we say every week: rate, subscribe, comment, whatever you can do to help get this podcast. If you're a supporter of this podcast, if you're a believer of this podcast, say something positive, do something positive, and it will reflect us, positively. So anything helps. Either it's leaving a comment and letting people know what you think about the show, giving us a 5-star rating, whatever it is. Everything is productive and everything helps. And we appreciate and thank you all for doing it. All right, let's say goodbye. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. All right, we're going to cross another state off of our map next week. Oklahoma, where the wind blows, sweeping down the plain. All right, we'll see you then. See you next week. See you on the pod.
Knowledge is power.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their father's hell did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they picked, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry. So just look at them and sigh.